Thank you for attending the Cannabis Investor Webcast. I would like to thank our platinum sponsors, Nemus Bioscience, Kaya Holdings, formerly known as Alternative Fuels Americas, Aurora Cannabis, Tariga Sciences, Organigram, and Technical 420. To view Technical 420's latest stock report, please visit www.technical420.com. To ask a question of our presenter, please type in your question in the question box in the lower right part of your screen. Our presenter today is Dennis Arsenault, CEO of Organigram Incorporated. Dennis, give me a couple of seconds. I will make you a presenter.
Thank you, Derwin. Pleased to have the opportunity to share some information on Organigram today and explain the investment opportunity of OGI and the Canadian industry. First, I'd like to share my personal view on some of the decision-making process that I underwent about a year or so ago when I chose to invest in Organigram and get involved. So I think the first thing that we need to focus on as investors is, number one, is there an industry and is it growing? That to me is a very important point I think that we all need to be thinking about. Number two, who are the companies within the industry? And then after that, needless to say, not all companies in the industry are going to do equally well. So then I want to know, in terms of the companies in the industries, who are the people behind the company? Who are the people working for the company? And what are the competitive advantages of the various companies within a growing industry? Once I take a look at that information, I can get a comfort level to invest, and hopefully today in the presentation I can deliver some of this information so that as investors you can take a look at Organigram and make the right decision. First, I think it's important maybe to give you a little bit of background on our industry in Canada. It is completely different from what's going on in the United States. In Canada, the Supreme Court decision in 1999 forced the government's hand in terms of making medical marijuana available to the Canadian citizens. So that was number one, very critical. It was not a government policy, it was a Supreme Court decision, and there's no going back on that. So in 1999, there was about 100 people in Canada that had their prescription for medical marijuana. So the government had to assess how they were going to deal with this necessity of having medical marijuana made available. So from 1999 to 2013, it went from 100 people to 37,000 people that had their prescription. And through 1999 to 2013, the government gave the right for these citizens that had their medical document to grow their own product. As you can all imagine, this was not a very manageable system because of diversion into the general population, in terms of having grow-ops in residential neighborhoods across the street from schools. So in April 1st of 2014, our industry was born, meaning the government gave out some licenses, and I believe there's 16 of them currently, for companies across Canada to produce medical marijuana. So hence our industry was born on April 1st of 2014, and away we go. So that gives you a little bit of a background on where the industry was born and where the industry got to where it is today. So for Organigram, for ourselves, pretty straightforward. In July of 2013, we applied to the federal government. We're very successful and very fortunate to receive one of the early licenses. And in November of 2013, we were told, guess what? Build your facility. We will come and inspect it. And if it is as you say you're going to build, obviously security being a big component of it, we'll grant your license. So on March 26th of 2014, Organigram was granted a license to be a licensed producer of medical marijuana in Canada, and we were the 13th company to receive that license. So, we're very fortunate that we have one of these licenses, as there are many companies that tried and have now pretty much given up on that concept. So, obviously moving from there, we built a facility. We were very fortunate. We did our first section of the building in a leased property, which we now owned. So we are able to expand within our existing facility. So the slide that's in front of you shows in the green area where we're currently producing from, and we can produce in that area up to 3,000 kilograms per year of production. And we're very fortunate as a publicly traded company. Moving forward, our site, we have a lot of land. We own the building next to us. So we are able to expand on our site, and that's quite critical as an investing decision moving forward because our license is attached to the physical address of our property. If we wanted to expand across the street, it would require another license, which can be quite a process if you would even get another license. So, very expandable. Floor plans there of our current facility. Phase 1 is completed. Phase 2 is completed. Phase 4 is just about finished. And, we are in a position now to be able to be producing in the vicinity of about, 28 to 3,000 kgs per year. There's other phases that can come to in the adjoining buildings. It just helps to see that the facility is expandable, and it's expandable to the vicinity of anywhere between 17 and 19,000 kilograms per year. So we're very fortunate. We've got the ability to grow on our site as the industry matures, and there's a lot of things that are happening within the industry that as an investor you want to take note of. Number one, about a month and a half ago, large insurance companies, one of the largest in Canada, started covering medical marijuana as a drug that the employees can get covered for. Very, very critical development. Now, needless to say, that needs to continue to grow, that all insurance companies cover it, but it is still an incredible milestone that came much sooner than our industry anticipated. The other industry event that's important for us to be very expandable is the fact that one of our parties in federal government parties, and we only have about 3 in Canada, is for the legalization of recreational marijuana. So moving forward, there's some nice events on the horizon that could make that it's very important as an organization to be expandable. So we're very fortunate at Organigram that we have that ability to expand on our site. Again, critical because the license is attached to the address. The other thing that's quite critical also, if I'm analyzing, there are, I think, 5 or 6 of our companies in Canada here that are publicly traded. So, at the end of the day, we need to look at, what are the competitive advantages that perhaps Organigram has or any of my competitors. As an investment decision, I think it's very important. We sometimes need to move through the hype of the industry. We need to sometimes move through the BS that we get in a new industry and really be able to take a look at, is there, some competitive advantages that I can weigh my investment decision based on. We're very fortunate at Organigram. We are the only company that's publicly listed that has an organic product, and that resonates very well with the doctors, and it resonates very well with the patients. So, being and producing an organic product is shown to be a tremendous advantage for us, and it's important to note that it does not increase our costs to produce it organically. It's just a little more complex, and you have to have the right team in place. Also, critically for us, the 2 biggest components to producing marijuana are electricity and labor. The province of New Brunswick, we're situated above the state of Maine on the east coast, very economically depressed part of our country. And, labor rates here are probably by far the lowest in the country, and that's not something to be proud of, but it is the reality, and we're able to secure quality labor at a lower cost due to the fact that living costs are less. The second critical one is that we have the second lowest electricity rates in Canada, and we're very fortunate that that's the case. We're paying, for example, about 7.2 cents per kilowatt here in New Brunswick. In Ontario, where I would say the bulk of our competitors are, they're paying in the vicinity of 10.8 cents per kilowatt. And electricity is a tremendous cost for our industry. So therefore, it gives us some cost advantages which are important when we're moving forward in the maturity of the industry. Another benefit we have in New Brunswick is we are bilingual. Our first language for a large part of our population is French. And the adjoining province to us with 23% of the Canadian population is a francophone province, and many of my competitors don't even have a francophone website. They certainly don't have a presence in social media in French, and they certainly don't have, most of them, even customer service that's in French. So we have 23% of the population that cannot even be served by some of our competitors. So we see that as a tremendous advantage. Obviously, we're courting that marketplace very hard, and we're making great inroads to service a large segment of our population that our competitors are not even positioned to service. So these are things that are beneficial to Organigram. Geographically, in Canada, the closest competitor we have to us is in Ontario, and that's 760 miles away. So geographically, we've got a nice competitive advantage of being in our little neck of the woods, and it benefits us moving forward, both in terms of low cost, labor, the organic product, which I mentioned, very things that are quite critical. It goes without saying also that when I spoke earlier about is the industry growing, I made reference to the on April 1st of 2014. It's important to note that since April 1st of 2014, there's been another 18,000 people that have received their prescription, and that's not to April, that's to the end of January. So if you analyze that, you're looking at almost a 50% growth rate in the industry year over year. And the government is anticipating that there'll be about 450,000 Canadians with their prescription, their medical document for medical marijuana, and that represents an industry of about $1.4 billion conservatively that the federal government is putting out there. So I think what's important to note is there's all kinds of market for the 16 or 17 people that have a license, but again, not all 16 or 17 will grow at the same pace, and I think as an investor, that's what we need to look through and decide which are the companies that have true competitive advantages and which ones will rise to the top in 12 months, 18 months, and 24 months from now. So, as an investor, the types of things that you need to be asking yourself. Annual production capacity, as I just indicated, there's a picture of the building. We're fortunate we own the adjoining property also. Annual capacity that can get to around 26, and with our higher yields that we've experienced here recently, it's more like 2,800 to 3,000 kgs in terms of annual capacity out of our existing facility. Revenues, we're projecting about 1,500 patients at year end of 2015. We're on target. Matter of fact, probably a little bit ahead of target to be able to hit that number. Production capacity, how much we plan on selling. Average price in Canada is averaging anywhere between $7 and $8. We like to budget conservatively at $7, and we show our projected revenues for 2015, 2016, and 2017. So, the industry is growing tremendously. Very fortunate to have some nice competitive advantages, to be well located within geographically Canada, and it positions us well to move forward. In terms of the capitalization table, we've got about 56 million shares outstanding, fully diluted, 53 million as we speak right now. 2.5 or 2.2 million in the bank to look after our operating expenses and a little bit of capital expenditures that we're working on. We're about 25% institutionally owned. We trade on the venture as OGI, and we trade on the OTC QB as OGRMF. If you look at the stock charts for our industry, you will notice that the hype of the industry in the spring of 2014 has subsided to where the investing community now wants to sit down and see which of the publicly traded companies are going to be able to deliver earnings moving forward. The industry is attracting tremendous investor attention, as it should. But at the end of the day, once that hype comes out, we need to be trading at a multiple of our earnings, and we look forward to the day when that's how we'll all be evaluated. I know Organigram does, because there's no room in an industry for hype. There's no room in an industry for short-term traders. We need to have educated investors that are looking at an investment and looking at 12 months, 2-year, 3-year horizon when, you know, legalization will arrive in Canada and what that'll do to our multiples moving forward. A little bit about myself and some of my people, because you know, it is one of the most important things of a business. I'm sorry, we could be manufacturing windows. It really doesn't matter what product we are manufacturing. It all comes down to, do I have good people? Do I have people that are motivated, that are capable? Do I have phenomenal customer service? And is my production facility efficient? Again, avoid the hype. These are the realities. We could be producing windows as much as we're producing medical marijuana. We need to get those aspects of our business done properly. A bit of background on myself. I've been involved with Organigram for 13 months. I was not the founder. I was asked to come in and invest in the business, and I was asked to come in and you know, take a leadership role of CEO. You know, the investors that invested originally looked at my track record, and I guess we're comfortable. I am a Moncton, New Brunswick raised boy. This is my hometown. I went to university, trained in business, accounting major, finance minor, and upon graduating from university, started 10 businesses in a 13-year period. And in 1996, by then had sold most of the businesses and developed and built my own real estate, which I currently own. So I was retired for the last 5 years, and bottom line is I was asked to get involved, and I just could not turn down the opportunity. So having said that, what was the biggest attraction? I'm going to share a little story which is relevant to what I think is going to happen with medical marijuana and what I think is going to happen to legalization of marijuana overall. In 1990, if some of you guys are old enough to remember, I'm 53 years old, you had to go to Atlantic City, or you had to go to Las Vegas, or there was one place in Western Canada you'd go to a casino. There was no gambling at every street corner or every state or every casino or every area. So, you know, I was approached to invest back in the early ages of the gambling industry, specifically in manufacturers of video lottery machines, and I could not get myself to write the check for $250,000, which I had, because I could not understand that governments would permit the legalization of gambling and the spread of gambling throughout society. Well, ladies and gentlemen, needless to say, that was a terrible decision on my part, because you know, we all know now that we can gamble in every state, and because the reality is our governments are not faced with decisions based on morality. They'll base their decisions on taxation, and we're seeing what's happening in Colorado on the subject of collecting of taxes. So one of the reasons I come out of retirement to get involved with Organigram is I still have that 1990 decision that kind of haunts me, where a friend asked for $250,000 and 2 years later gave out $22 on the $1 investment. So I see medical marijuana, legalization of recreational marijuana, as the same type of thing that we're going to see in our society moving forward. And if you're on this call, you are curious about investing in medical marijuana or regular marijuana, and I congratulate you on that. I've done the same thing. Governments like the taxes, and governments will eventually let the proliferation of marijuana. Who's to say that it's worse than alcohol? I'm not a doctor. It's not really for us to say, but the reality is alcohol is legal, and currently marijuana is not. And I think over the next 3 to 5 years, we are going to see that evolve. So, you know, as an investment, it's important to look at the individual companies, but also it's important to look at the industry, where that company fits within the industry, and also what are potential catalysts that will affect the industry, such as insurance companies starting to cover medical marijuana, and such as the legalization of recreational marijuana. So I think they are things that are important, and I hope as investors you take them in consideration and that you invest, you know, your money wisely. At the end of the day, you know, the right decisions need to be made. We have a lot of different avenues to invest our money, and hopefully Organigram makes you curious and you at least start following it and you know, enjoy where things are going to go if you're an investor. I got the phone call, as I said, 13 months ago. It was exactly February 27th of 2014. We did not even have our license yet, and I invested $800,000 of my own personal money. So the CEO of the company is invested. I'm not doing this for a paycheck. I am escrowed for 3 years, and I think most of you understand what that means. My stock cannot be sold. Some of it can over a 3-year period, but the bulk cannot be sold for 3 years. So you have a management team that's extremely invested on the performance of the stock, and I think that's the type of management as an investor that you're looking for. Other people that are involved, they're very critical also. Excuse me. All over the United States, I'm sure most of you recognize the beer brand Moosehead Breweries, a Canadian company not far from here. My president was the gentleman that ran Moosehead Breweries, so very, very knowledgeable in being able to run companies with 400 to 600 employees. So the management structure is very good. Our QA manager is a microbiologist and an immunologist, very critical. As much as marijuana is called a weed and will literally grow just about anywhere, that's not the same thing as growing a quality product that will pass the very stringent testing of our federal government. So another one is important to note also, goes back to my philosophy and Organigram's philosophy. Every employee in the company has stock options. If you look at the capitalization table, you see 1.185 million stock options. That is a very good thing. Everybody in the organization is incentivized to be creative, to work hard, and when the Organigram stock goes to where management is very comfortable it belongs and will go, every employee in the facility will benefit from that. And that's important to note, because going back to what I said earlier, what are the most important things we need to be deciding? Is there an industry? Is it growing? What's the competitive advantages of a particular company within that industry? Where are its people? And these are the things that you should be considering. Keep the hype out of it. There is a lot of hype in our industry, and the investment decisions that you make will be the right ones. So that concludes my presentation. Derwin, I don't know if there's any questions, but I'd be very glad to answer any questions that individuals on the phone or on the webinar would be curious about.
Thank you, Dennis. Give me a couple of seconds to queue up questions. The first question is, what is your view on prices? Will greenhouses put pressure on prices?
I don't think it's the greenhouses that will put pressure on prices. We are in a pretty bizarre industry. When I say bizarre, a very good industry to be in. See, we have to understand that black market exists for marijuana, and black market is also supplying some of the people that could get their prescription to buy from a licensed producer. So I foresee some pressure on the pricing in 2016, but as weird as this may sound, this is a good thing, because I think when the price gets down to $5 or $6 per gram, you're going to cut out a large part of the black market, and the customers will come over to the licensed producers. Our system's a pretty simple one. You place your order over a computer, and the product arrives at your doorstep 2 days later in a package at your door. So the convenience is tremendous, and so I don't necessarily see the greenhouse model being what is going to apply a lot of pressure. At the end of the day, it's a beneficial thing if the prices come down a little bit moving forward, because you're going to have a that much bigger market. The other thing, too, you have to understand is the greenhouse model may, and again, I'm speculating, may have a slightly lower capital cost, but the operating costs in Canada, you got to remember, we're not in Canada all require supplemental heating, all require supplemental lighting, and have to have other capital costs to deal with the fact that your facility cannot emit any odor. So, again, their costs are not that much different than a producer who's producing in a controlled environment. And for consistency of product, I can assure you that you need to be producing in a controlled environment versus a greenhouse. So, again, I hope that answers the question.
Okay. Next question. Although the Canadian market is a huge market, do you have any intentions of U.S. or international expansion plans?
I really do not see any opportunities in the United States due to the current framework of regulation, but we see tremendous opportunity in other countries, and I'm going to give you an example. What's happening is that Canada is one of the first countries to go medical marijuana legal for the whole country. So many other countries are currently looking at this. We have a list of 22 of them currently, and we have an opportunity to move into those countries, identify companies, conglomerates that want to get into the space, and to partner with them in terms of our technology and our expertise to be able to facilitate the growth of the industry within other countries. So yes, there is tremendous opportunity internationally, but I do not see the United States of America with its current legislation being one of them.
Next question, any other growth areas or potential opportunities outside of growing cannabis from your licensed facility?
Well, the big growth opportunity will come in the oils and edibles down the road, as currently oils and edibles are not permitted in Canada, although the government lost a large court decision recently that oil should be permitted, so I think oils are coming on the forefront here shortly. But again, that is what I see as the biggest opportunity right now for our industry, and one that we're focusing on. But you got to remember, it is a foolish business exercise to try to be everything to everybody. I think what you want to do is be really great at a few things, and that's what we're focused on at Organigram.
Next question, how have you dealt with the strict advertising rules?
Well, it's been a challenge. There's no two ways about that. But we're finally, I think, as an industry, because we have an industry association, very much in compliance with the current rules. I think I can speak only for Organigram. We're fortunate that there's not a lot of advertising that can go on because the message is out that our product is organic, and one of the only ones that's organic, and we're benefiting from that. So if it was a free-for-all in advertising, then we might have to spend additional millions of dollars of getting our message out. Whereas nobody can or has to spend those millions, and we're able to ride the wave of being organic.
Next question, and this you presenting on the Cannabis Investor Webcast will kind of answer this question. But what are some of the things you're doing to increase liquidity and increase volume in the stock?
Well, I know that in the last month or so, if you look very closely, I think we've been one of the highest traded volumes, which is a good thing. It's going in the right direction. In May, I know that my Director of Investor Relations and myself were on the road for 2 weeks throughout the United States and Canada putting some presentations together. So, and I spent 5 weeks in last November, in New York and Denver and Seattle and throughout Canada spreading the message. I think what happens is, and if you have a lot of astute investors, there is a saying that goes, selling promotes selling and buying promotes buying. So, we've had I think 40% bump here in our stock, or 30% bump in the last couple of weeks. We've put out some information that's that helps. I think the industry is taking notice of what we're doing. We have some announcements that are forthcoming, and we'll be able to share those in the near future. So I think it's like anything else. The momentum is building. There's great volume in our stock now. We're trading some days 200,000-300,000 shares. So the liquidity is coming, Derwin, and we're doing some things early May that will continue to increase the eyes on Organigram.
This question, Dennis, is several questions in one. How do you see the MMPR competition playing out? Will HC continue to limit the license as much as they can? Also, what impact do you see from current court cases, and what impact will access to edibles have, and what impact will MMAR's continued existence have?
Well, I think that in terms of, there's no question that Health Canada has chosen to limit the amount of licenses. And Health Canada has some very, very important information at its fingertips. It knows exactly how many citizens have their their prescription. It knows exactly the quantity of the prescription. It knows how much the 16th licensed producers are selling. It knows what our inventory is. It knows what our production capacity is, and it knows what our expansion plans are. So Health Canada is in a great position to be able to see if it has a healthy marketplace. And I think Health Canada's perspective of a healthy marketplace is, a price point that's affordable for the medicine. So that's number one. The court cases, clearly the one on the oils is very, very beneficial to our industry, and we look forward for that one, washing itself out and going into, becoming legislation. The Allard case on the MMARs, still having the right to grow for themselves, I think at the end of the day that will settle itself moving forward. It's not for me to speculate which way that will settle, but I would be very surprised if our Supreme Court would continue to let people to have facilities that have literally 500 to 1,000 lights in it to produce marijuana for a couple of people. It defies logic. Now, do I think Canadian citizens should have the right to grow their own product? Absolutely. As you're all aware, people in Colorado, for example, can grow their own product. But there's still a very, very robust industry in terms of dispensaries and wholesale. The same goes for home brewing beer or wine. Canadian and American citizens have the right to brew their own beer, their own wine. But the vast majority of society chooses to go buy it at a store at a much more expensive price point than doing it for themselves. So, I don't give a lot of thought to the MMAR court case. I think at the end of the day, common sense will prevail. I think that people should have the right to grow their own, but I want to be very specific. They have the right to grow their own, not an individual having the right to grow it for a couple thousand people and to say that they're growing it for themselves. So there's a very, very, very pointed difference there. But, these are things that, our industry is currently growing at about, a 50% rate per year. There's, 18, 19,000 new people that come into the system in 7-8 months. That alone is, $100 million worth of sales a year. So, again, I don't think we're bound to any future court cases. We have a robust and healthy industry that's growing now, and we look forward to grabbing our part of that pie.
You have been fortunate to avoid recalls, but your competitors have not. How big of a risk is there that a competitor could actually lose their license?
I do not foresee and cannot imagine a licensed producer losing their license for a recall. We have to understand here that we are stakeholders within an industry. Health Canada is the regulator. The licensed producers are producing the product, and it's not a product like a chip bag or whatever you want. It's a medicine. So Health Canada's situation of shutting down a licensed producer and waking up with 5,000, 10,000 people that can't get their medicine next week, it's not in their interest to do that. It goes without saying that if you're a very irresponsible licensed producer, I think that over time, you're going to incur some problems. But the regulator has as much interest to work with the licensed producer in making sure that the license stays in place. Now, if you consistently cannot produce product that passes testing, I would suspect that there's going to be a pretty serious discussion between the regulator and the licensed producer. But that does not come from getting 1, 2, or 3 product recalls. That would come over a long period of time of being buffoons in terms of producing product.
Okay, next question. Do you foresee any changes or ease of international laws around international transport of product or genetics?
Absolutely not for product. Every jurisdiction in the world sees cultivation of marijuana as a labor-intensive industry. Every jurisdiction in the world likes jobs, so there is no rhyme or reason to permit the exporting or importation of the finished product. In terms of the importation, exportation of genetics, it, as you know, is currently permitted amongst countries that have legalized medical marijuana or legalized marijuana. So, that's already in place. But, countries like jobs, countries like having a robust economy, and I do not, under any circumstances, see the foreseeing of us being able to, export product to another country on a long-term basis or import product from another country.
Next question, how is Health Canada addressing the doctors writing prescriptions side of the equation?
Well, it's Health Canada ends up not having any say or stake in the relationship with doctors. That relationship is controlled through the College of Physicians and the Canadian Medical Association. So Health Canada has decided that the doctors are the ones that can give you the golden key to buying medical marijuana, but it does not have any sway over doctors' regulations or decisions. It is a known fact that the College of Physicians in Canada would like to see more research on medical marijuana, and the reality is research takes time and it's expensive. No one's done that research in the past because you cannot patent marijuana. So whoever would have spent millions and tens of millions of dollars on research could not have economically benefited from that research. So, it's not being doctor-driven right now, and it's not being regulator-driven. It's being patient-driven. Patients that have real symptoms, arthritis, chronic pain, anxiety, sleep disorder, requiring it for cancer treatment, MS, ALS, Parkinson's, they're going to their doctor and they're insisting on being able to try medical marijuana instead of the pharmaceutical drugs that have been jammed down their throat for the last 100 years. So, this is where the industry is being driven, and it will continue to be driven, irrelevant of what the College of Physicians says or irrelevant of what the Medical Association says. It's about patients with real symptoms trying to alleviate those symptoms and have a quality of life, and that's where it should be.
You did not reach your goals for capital raise last time. Will you be raising capital in 2015 in order to meet the revenue projections that you just gave?
We do not foresee raising capital in 2015. As you can imagine, as investors, there are other means and ways of getting money into the Treasury, whether it be debt, whether it be, we're in a very economically depressed part of the country, whether it be in government assistance for creating jobs. So there are a lot of means, Derwin, to fill the Treasury, and we do not anticipate having to go to the capital markets at all in 2015 to execute on a current business plan.
Next question. You mentioned 22 countries legalizing cannabis. One of the audience members wanted to know where could they find those 22 countries.
We pay a lot of money to do the research we do, and we are aware of at least 22, and I think it's even more than that, to be quite frank with you. But that's research that's proprietary, and we intend to benefit from that knowledge and continue to work with partnerships in countries around the world.
Okay. Next question. How will cannabis companies be evaluated if there are no earnings, no cash flows? So how will they be evaluated?
Well, I think the important thing as an investor to do what I said earlier. They need to be evaluated on, I think everybody on this webinar has concluded there will be a robust industry. So you got to evaluate it on whether they have real competitive advantages. No BS, no hype, no nothing. Are they real competitive advantages? For example, does Organigram have some real tangible competitive advantages? Obviously, electricity is one. Obviously, organics another. Obviously, low wages is a third one, and that's not something we're proud of. It's just, fortunately, the cost of living is low here. So, as an investor, that's what you need to decide which one that you're going to invest in. And then from there, obviously, moving forward in 6, 12 months, We need to evaluate on how many clients we've got signed up. We need to evaluate start on earnings, and assign a multiple to those earnings. The basis of the multiple should be taken. The issues to be taken in consideration on the multiple needs to be, insurance companies starting to cover medical marijuana, legalization on the recreational side. These are all things that will affect the multiple moving forward. So if I'm an investor, you got to get through the BS and really say, does that company have real, tangible, competitive advantages?
Okay,
Derwin, if I can say something, I'm not a stock promoter. Never owned a publicly traded company before. I built 10 companies from scratch over a 13-year period. My presidents run a company with 500-600 employees. At the end of the day, it comes down to management. I'm not from the marijuana industry. I'm not from the investor community industry. I'm not a stock promoter. I'm someone that knows how to build businesses and put the right people in front of me. Any good business leader is well aware that he's only going to be as good as his people. So as an investor, that's what you got to look at. Very critical. Who's running the company, and what is the skill set of those individuals? I think that's critical.
Let me see if I can kind of cut up this next question. A lot of cannabis companies have a significant amount of shares outstanding. Do you see these companies will exist in the future? What do you think of you guys? I guess they're saying that you guys only have about 54 million shares outstanding, and a lot of the cannabis companies have huge, significant amounts over that. So I guess they're asking, why do you guys don't have so many shares outstanding as the other cannabis companies?
Well, I guess at the end of the day, it's a beneficial thing. I mean, I know that there was a company in our space a while back, or I think they're still in their space, and they literally have, I think it's 3 billion shares or 300 million shares outstanding. That defies logic, to be quite frank with you. At the end of the day, the least amount of shares, the least amount of earnings you need, so that share price pops. So it's a very simple mathematical equation, I don't see the share quantity outstanding to be a big issue in terms of, the matrix of the business. It really comes down to, what are the earnings and how much earnings per share and a multiple based on that, and you get a company valuation. So, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to who can deliver earnings, who can deliver customers, who can deliver earnings. And again, let's throw the hype out of the window that's medical marijuana, and let's just consider that we're producing widgets. And that takes good management, good customer service, a great product, and a motivated team.
Okay. Can you provide a list of the 13 Canadian companies with a license? I don't know if you could do that, but I guess they want to know it's 13 companies, I guess, with a license for medical.
It's up to 16 now. If you go on Health Canada's website and search marijuana, they will show up on the Health Canada website.
Are any of those companies publicly traded?
Yeah, I think, Derwin, I don't want to mislead you, but I think there are 6 of them.
Okay. All right, Dennis, that concludes our Q&A. Any last comments regarding Organigram?
No, listen, I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit of Organigram's story, what I think is the strengths and weaknesses, the strengths of the business and the weaknesses of, some of the things in the industry, like you said, about court cases and stuff. And it's been a pleasure. And, as an investor like I was 13 months ago, be wise, do your homework, and invest wisely. It's important. You got to look through the hype and get down to who's got good management, who's got real tangible advantages. So again, I appreciate the opportunity, and take care, Derwin.
Thank you. We really appreciate your presentation, and we really appreciate Brett putting this together for us. Thank you, Organigram. The next presentation will be Michael Berger.